everybody. My name is Ben Roberts. I'm Chief of Technology and Innovation at Liquid Intelligent Technologies.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jane Mwai, and I'm the Head of Technology at Standard Chartered Bank.
Good afternoon. My name is Albert Detomule. I head the commercialization and growth for digital products at KCB.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Moses Okundi. I'm the CIO at ABSA Kenya.
Thank you. Ben Roberts. Safaricom just announced commercialization of 5G late last year. We've seen a couple of other telcos in Africa, very few I must say, compared to the other regions. What's the state of 5G? Do you think we're going to, first of all, how many are on 5G? Show of hands. Actually consuming it. All right, how many are consuming 5G in the organizations? Not for streaming and the organization. All right. I guess that starts it off.
Yeah, I mean, we're at a stage where 5G in Africa is, it's early days, and we have Kenya's ahead of some other countries. So I think Safaricom in Kenya, South Africa, a few of the networks have launched 5G. And when I say launched, I mean, you'll hear some announcements from some countries where they put up one base station and had a party, and that's not really a launch. That happened in Kenya, I think, about 3 years ago, and I think Safaricom have moved on a bit and have rolled out some actual base stations. But however, I think the reason for lack of people in the room being 5G users is from the consumer side is around devices. So a 5G phone is the cheapest 5G phone is more than the average people spend on mobile phones in the country. So this is the average level. A lot of people are spending a lot less, but it's even more than the average people are spending. Now, when it comes to IoT and M2M, we're having a chicken and egg situation here. So really, although Safaricom have launched a good number, they haven't got full countrywide coverage of 5G. And then they really need people to go and buy phones to really justify having countrywide coverage. And then that's creating a problem, because if you're in financial services and you want to do something with M2M or IoT, you really need countrywide coverage, right? We've rolled out an IoT network which is got some specific use cases, and we're coming back 87% of the population, but we're focusing on tracking things. So we're covering all of the roads, all of the airports. The application use cases that we're building it for have gone to cover those areas where you can track parcels and stuff. But if we wanted to do something to get to 99% of the population, that would be quite a bigger investment. Now, if you're in the banking space or fintech space, you really need that coverage. This is why 2G is being used still for all financial services, because somebody in the village has to be able to use it, right? And if it's sending money or paying your electricity bill or whatever, it has to work.
Let me stop you there. So you're actually saying that 2G is the most, when it comes to fintech, 2G is the most consumed spectrum.
Well, actually 2G and 4G, actually 3G is sort of tailing away. And there's reasons for that because of the frequencies it's using are a bit higher. But 2G and 4G in Kenya is available on those lower frequencies, so it's having better rural coverage than the 3G and much better than the 5G. So it's creating it's creating a gap, I guess, in the Gs, right? So when IEBC were largely using 4G, and I think they covered large part, most of the country, and very few exceptions where they didn't have coverage in the election process. But it's a shame, and I would like to see. I've got a lot of banks here, right, and on the panel, so I would like to see Banks being a bit more innovative in adopting, picking up IoT services, not just doing it for payments. You know, there's a lot of opportunity to actually lend people money and give loans. I think that's what banks are supposed to do. Movable asset financing. You know, you can say, oh, I'm not going to lend you money to buy a tractor because I don't know what you're going to do with it. But using IoT, you can track that tractor, right? So we can have much more, any kind of assets, even down to a bicycle or a boda. We're seeing new startups coming into this space. And even, you know, companies like Uber have done partnerships with banks to finance vehicles. But I really think banks should step up and enable the hustlers using IoT.
Yeah, thank you. I like that you mentioned that because I mean, even if you look at the boda sector, which is the biggest, I mean, they run the sector mainly on IoT because Watu Credit were the biggest financiers of motorbikes. I mean, if they didn't have a tracking, you know, if they didn't have telematics or tracking, they wouldn't be able to recover those bodas and just give loans without any collateral. Yeah, thanks. Jen, you obviously have a very, I would say, sophisticated clientele, Standard Chartered. Obviously, I'll be interested to know how you're reaching your clients via IoT. I mean, whether it's the wearables, and they obviously also, I would suppose that they also have access to 5G. You know, at least a large percentage of that. I mean, how are you utilizing, and how is it looking like in your organization? And do you have any plans to start commercializing that?
Thanks, Andrew. You don't think we finance bodas? So speaking to IoT, and I'll give an example of something that we did. It was a proof of concept mainly, and that was about maybe 2 years ago. And it was a partnership that we did with a fintech and one of our clients, and it was IoT, and it was in the water space. So we are also moving out of payments per se. So I mean, it was our client had an issue around, I can't remember the word, something about when you can't track your water, but anyway. So we got them the IoT devices. We were working with a partner, a telco, and they had a partner who provided the devices, and then there was the SIM cards, and there was our client. And it was a very successful POC because they were able to track where they were losing the water leakage. And of course, now that improved on their revenue. And as our client, you can also lend them more money because now you can see how you can get more money. I mean, you can see where the money is going. So that was one of the big use cases. Another one that I see, because we do have insurance, we're not doing it now, but I think it's one of the things that we definitely can look at. It's the wearables and the health insurance. If you have a wearable, because many people do, I think in the room here, almost half, if not 80%, put up their hands. If you have a wearable, it means then that your health, we can track your health. And based on that, we can then determine whether you should be paying a higher premium on insurance or a lower premium or something like that. My favorite is car insurance. We sell car insurance as a bank. It's on our app. And I always question why I must pay 4.5% like everybody else, you know? And I think if you had an IoT device in my car, then you can tell whether or not really I should be paying 10% or I should be paying 2%. Yeah, for insurance. So there's lots of opportunities. We're not exploiting them yet. And I think somebody had spoken earlier about regulations. So I think we need to align between the insurance industries, the banking industries, etc., just to make sure that we can do a lot more. I know it's done in other countries. It's not a foreign thing. Something else we looked at some point was trade financing, again, using IoT. If you're importing, let's say you're Toyota and you want to bring in, I don't know how many cars from Japan. If you put IoT on those cars, IoT devices on those cars, and you put them on the ship, we can track them. So I can give you the letter of credit because I know exactly where those cars are in the high seas, when they get to the port, when they leave the port, etc. So there's lots of opportunities and things that can be done.
Thank you, Jen. Moses, you've obviously been involved in 5G a lot. I mean, you're in the tech space as a CIO at Vodafone Ghana. And just help us understand if this is actually a realistic case, because I'm sure you've worked on a couple of business cases even there to justify why they need to go, why they need to deploy 5G. At ABSA, are you using any, what's your plan on 5G in terms of, the loan disbursement process? What are you looking at? And just as you speak on that, also, it would be good if you could talk about security, because I know that's a big question, in your sector as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. I think let's start with IoT. And I think I really like the presentation from the gentleman from Afralti. And my takeaway is that I think we've just scratched the surface with regards to what's possible with IoT. And there are nuances. He talked about narrowband IoT, LTE-M, which has a higher frequency, and narrowband, which of course has a lower frequency. So, depending on how you invest, it requires that you have some level of understanding so that you don't burn your fingers. So, I see opportunities around various industries. Agriculture, I think Jane mentioned an example. And what a finance institution needs, or a bank, really, to evaluate risk is data. And in the agricultural industry, using IoT devices, if you're able to know when it's going to rain, if you're able to know the soil chemical composition at any given time, so in order to advise you when to do fertilizer and all that. And if you're an investor there and you can be able to show this data or link this data to an accounting mechanism within a finance institution, then potentially you can start unlocking credit opportunities that can facilitate the various life cycles of the agricultural journey. And the same is applicable in other industries. Take transport, autonomous vehicles, 5G, for instance, to have that level of precision where cars can talk to each other and inform each other when there's a portal or what action to take in the event of an emergency. I think what 5G provides is that ultra-low latency where it enables that very quick communication. Or in manufacturing, precision robots that are executing various tasks. And that will bring efficiencies. And bringing those efficiencies, those reflect in a cash flow. And of course, a financial institution then gets interested in that. The other point that I want to mention is, to bring all this together, I think a key factor is going to be collaboration across these industries. And the other point is that with the proliferation of IoT devices going into the trillions, there's even a sense now that 5G is not adequate. People are already working on 6G that is engineered or designed specifically for things in order to unlock that potential. So I think you mentioned security as well. So, the way an IoT device operates in your network is very different from a human. It's going to be critical to create a mechanism to identify the IoT devices. So you need to learn their behaviors, their patterns, if they're interacting with your network. And then secondly, you then need to segment and say that this is the category of IoT devices, this is the characteristics that they meet. And then create now a protection layer around that. What are the rules of engagement with these IoT devices? Because definitely, with the proliferation of the devices, the proliferation of cloud, cryptocurrencies, because of all that, everything is so democratized to the extent that me today with my credit card, I can be able to get into the dark web and maybe purchase tools or capabilities that can compromise institutions, either via an IoT device, for example, or via whatever other protocol that I may be able to exploit. So because of that, the way we design security, we'll need to really rethink all of that and develop it and incorporate security at multiple layers to really protect the services. So in short, today I think we're experimenting, similar to Jane. Of course, the tap and go, that human-initiated IoT interaction, we're doing that already to some extent, and we'll grow there. But I think the future is where, to use the term, we'll see an Uberization of IoT opportunities and lending opportunities and credit opportunities.
Yeah, interesting. Albert, your bank is very big on agency banking. You guys are all over the country and have a very big branch network. Yesterday, I just saw something that you can now pay Garmin watches. You can now tap and pay on your Garmin watch. But obviously, your clientele. Do you think that your clientele will actually be able to consume 5G? In the next 2 years, is your clientele a 5G clientele? And what are the opportunities? Maybe IoT, I think, what are the opportunities? What do you say?
Okay, so I like that question. Our clientele, whether they're ready. So we have a very big segment across, of course, we have the high net worth, I'm sure, where we compete, but we also have a very big, broad mass customer. So the agency banking is purely to drive presence and to bring the bank-like facilities in very remote areas. Okay, in Tulele, in Narok, somewhere at Vanga towards the border with Tanzania. That's what we are looking at. So where we can't physically, in a profit-wise, set up a bank branch, we run the agency services. At the moment, the most you can do with those kind of agency network is purely a 2G, 3G device, which is a POS. We are now doing the MPOS, which is mobile on POS, which means you just use your normal 3G, 4G device as a provider of the agency services, and we can be able to do card not present transactions. That's the most we've reached now in the layer of let's call it getting a little bit more tech stack in the agency services. But high-end Nairobi, urban, our very high-end customer, we are with them. You saw the tap to pay. You have the Garmin. But I'll say the latency now at the moment, which Moses was talking to, 4G LTE is able to deliver. So 5G relevance is still not yet there. Yeah. It might come in, as I said, non-initiated transactions. For example, I could have a situation where my meter reader can pick that my tokens of electricity are getting finished and just interact with my phone without my prompting and buy unit. And I continue operating. And if I'm running a house and there are any leakages, it can prompt the provider to fix, and it can even provide for me notifications that there's something happening with my piping of either my fiber or my water or my electricity provision to my house. And I can be able to at least challenge the provider of that utility for losses. Or even days when, because I'm sure you have very different fiber providers. And most of us are on a post-paid model. Now you can actually challenge or even move to a tokenization kind of provision of the fiber, because you take it when you need it, and when you don't need it, the system, you stop, because you have these interactions between your device and the fiber router that just when you need it is when you pay. That's where we want to go. It will also be provided by KCB, by the way.
Thank you.
Because we have a good layer of customer, layering from top to down.
Yeah, thanks for that. I like that you said that right now 4G is able to, the 4G's latency is okay and it's able to run most of the use cases. that you guys are deploying. Just to sum it up, Ben, Mambo kwa ground, like Kenyans will put it, do you think we are fully ready to consume 5G? I mean, if you look at it, 4G is not even 100% penetration in the country. And that's sub-Saharan Africa. Same as South Africa, you know, even with load shedding. Are we there yet? Or is it something that CIOs can actually start, you know, looking for budget to look for IoT-capable POS systems and stuff like that? Are we there yet, or do we need some time?
It's going to take some time. If I was to say the immediate thing CIOs should be doing now, it's actually, you know, if you give phones to your staff, don't just give the Kabambi phone to most of your staff and give the 5G to the executives. Give them all 5G phones, huh? But we do have a long way to go. We are going to see 5G being used for fixed wireless access, so as to give broadband in the home and in the business, and so I think everybody should be probably considering 5G in some of the branch networks. But the reality of Kenya is that for most of the financial services, where you have a branch, you've probably got fiber to most, and in areas where you don't have fiber, you've got a wireless link or something, that probably isn't one of those 5G areas, so it's one of those areas being left behind. Another thing that we're not yet seeing, but is a global trend, is around private 5G networks. Even in Africa, there are not that many private 4G networks, and we're rolling out some to mining in countries like Zambia, DRC, South Africa, where there's heavy, large-scale mining. But private 5G can be quite interesting for large industrial sites, deploying IoT in a place like Olakaria, where you've got a lot of geothermal. Kenya ports, you can have really a lot of things going on in a port where you've got autonomous vehicles and all sorts of things. It's really going to need 5G. I did mention it, I think, in the year ahead, but one of the use cases for 5G, private 5G is in broadcast and media. It's being used a lot in stadiums, football and everything else. So you think this isn't happening here, but actually a team from Strathclyde University came to Kenya, and they actually were doing wildlife safaris. So they were doing interactive wildlife safaris they set up private 5G. They went to Olapajeta, set up a private 5G network in a van, and then we're doing this kind of live outside broadcast wildlife interactive safaris, and this was showcased in IBC, which is the sort of global broadcast show in Europe of all the sort of best tech in the broadcast industry. So we are seeing some cool stuff, but that was an experiment rather than a commercial application. But there's a lot can be done.
Yeah, thank you. I like that you said that private 5G networks will probably be more commercially viable. I mean, like, take the instance, this weekend is a rally weekend. You're sponsoring the rally. We probably will have had a 5G temporary network to just cover the whole event, and guys can stream and all that. And, cities like Tatu City, where you have lots of manufacturing going on, those are ripe for 5G, private 5G networks. I think we can take some questions from the audience. Do we have a revolving mic? Please go ahead.
Great. It's a question to the panelists. Just, if you're talking about private 5G, clearly there's a conversation to be had with the mobile network operators first. And then, of course, the work that Strathclyde was doing is a bit better from research. But I just want to know, from where the panelists, where they sit at this point in time, what sort of engagements are going on? What sort of collaborations are happening on private 5G? And again, are they talking to the regulator around this? What sort of frequencies do they want to use for it? And what are the low-hanging fruits in terms of IoT innovations? Thanks.
Moses, you want to take that?
I think that's a good one for Ben.
Yeah, Ben, you want to take that?
Yeah, look, I think there are frequencies available for 5G, and I think the people I was talking about who did the broadcast stuff, I think they're mutual friends of ours. But you know, they did speak to the CA, and I can't remember what frequencies they used. There's the another option, which is from the commercial networks of network slicing. So you can potentially go to Safaricom and ask to have some private capacity assigned from network slicing. So that's another possibility. But at the moment, you know, from an enterprise side, it might seem a hard proposition because you're not a licensed operator to embark in private 5G. But I would suggest go talk to an operator. So you know, if you're running a port, you wouldn't know how to get a communications license and run your own network. But if you partner with an operator, a fixed line operator or a mobile operator, then that can happen. And those application use cases we're seeing in, you know, all over the world, Korea and others, often there being a partnership of the telco with the enterprise, basically. So that's these are complex solutions, but I think all of the telcos, including ourselves and everybody, will have, you know, somewhere there'll be some complex solution architects who can help with that.
Thank you, thank you. I think our time is up. Thank you, Moses. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you, everyone.